4, Chapter 26, Consequences. At every big assembly, the lower grades sit down near the stage, the upper grades stack up toward the back of the auditorium. So this is the first year I've ever sat in the very back row. And I have to say, I like it back here. I feel sort of hidden. Mrs. Porter is on stage and the room gets very quiet as she steps to the microphone. Good morning, girls and boys, and thank you for finding your seats in such a calm and orderly way. I've asked you here to talk about buttons. There's a quick buzz of chatter and a little bit of laughing, but Mrs. Porter shakes her head and frowns, and the auditorium goes silent again. Over the past week or so, many of you have become very interested in buttons, but with almost every fad that finds its way to school, there comes a moment where that fad begins to get in the way of life and our work. And we've now reached that moment. Therefore, starting tomorrow morning, any buttons that are seen here at school will be taken away by your teachers and will be held for you until the end of the school year. And today, I expect any of you who may have buttons here at school to take them home and leave them at home. Of course, I'm not talking about the buttons that we all wear each day, but the buttons that are being traded and collected and used as toys and game pieces. So I'm going to say this again. I expect all of you who have buttons here at school today to take those buttons home with you this afternoon and leave them there. Please raise your hand now if you understand what I've just asked everyone to do. I put my hand up in the air, and so does every other kid in the auditorium. So, that's it. My wish has come true. Mrs. Porter says the button fad is over. So, it is. At least at school. You may put your hands down now. And thank you all very much. The auditorium filled with a sudden buzz because every kid here knows that the assembly is over. Some of the younger kids down in front even begin to stand up. Please, quiet, and take your seats. The room gets quiet, but it's not the same full silence as before, and it makes me wonder if anyone has ever done a scientific study about large groups of children all together in the same room. But this makes me remember a nature show about bees that Grandpa and I watched, and how many little disturbances will go rifling right through a whole beehive. Mrs. Porter has more to say, but now the bees are restless. As many of you know, a very large quantity of buttons was found on our school playground on Wednesday. That one sentence sets off a burst of chatter, a lot of nodding, and a lot of reaching into pockets. That one sentence also makes my stomach tie into a knot. Ellie's sitting right next to me, and I'm afraid she's going to be able to hear my heart as it thumps inside my chest, my throat, and my head. Quiet, please. Everyone, settle down. I know that a lot of you picked up buttons when you were outside yesterday, but there were still many left on the ground. After school, I walked around with our custodian and with the town employees who mowed the grass. They were concerned that the buttons might damage the lawnmowers, and when they began mowing, several cars stopped to complain that bits of buttons had struck their cars as they drove past. I had to call the police and ask them to close down the street next to the playground until the mowing was finished. I'm trying to sit very still, trying not to breathe too fast, trying not to faint, trying not to jump out of my seat and run screaming from the auditorium. And Mrs. Porter keeps talking. After the mowing was finished, 2 police officers and I studied the school security video recordings from Tuesday night. We saw that someone came into the schoolyard, not once or twice, but 4 times to throw buttons all over the field. It was dark when this happened, so it was impossible to identify the person who did this. The police department is now calling this case of littering on public property, and they have opened an investigation. Any student has information that might be helpful to the police should speak to a teacher or me. A deep hush settles over the auditorium. Mrs. Porter lets the silence go. And on and on. My jaw is clamped so tightly that I think I might crush my teeth. Hank is sitting in the row ahead of me, about 3 seats to the left, and I'm just praying he doesn't turn around and wink or smile or give me a thumbs up. But he's too smart to actually do something like that. Actually, he's probably freaked out too. If you know about a crime, then you're just as guilty as the person who did it, unless you tell. Finally, Mrs. Porter speaks. I want to thank you all for paying such careful attention this morning. The first graders may leave now. Everyone else, please remain seated until your teachers ask you to stand up. The auditorium begins to buzz again, and Ellie whispers, Somebody is going to need a lawyer. Or not. The fine for littering can't be a big deal, right? Maybe like $100 or something? Anyway, pretty exciting, don't you think? My mouth is so dry, I can barely talk. Yeah, it's exciting. But the correct word is terrifying. It's terrifying. I've never been in trouble at school before, never been sent to the principal, never had to stay after school. I can't even remember the last time a teacher yelled at me. And this is real trouble. The kind where parents have to come for a meeting in the principal's office and the police will be there. The police. As this thought slams into my skull, Hank turns around and catches my eye. I smile and try to look brave and calm and totally fail. I don't know if Hank looks worried or sad or terrified like me, but I know one thing for sure. I can't sit still for one more second. I whisper to Ellie, "See you in social studies." And then I stand up and scooch my way along the row of kids to get to Mrs. Lang, who's standing in the aisle. "Mrs. Lang, may I go to the office? I don't feel well," which is not a lie. I've never felt worse in my life. She stares into my face for a second, and I can see the flash of concern in her eyes. I must look awful. "Of course. You go right ahead, Grace. Do you need someone to walk with you?" "No, I'll be okay, thanks." The halls are filled with third and fourth graders leaving the auditorium, but I barely see them, can barely feel my feet on the tile floor. And when I get to the office, the doors leading outside are just to the right, and I feel like making a break for it, like a convict in a prison movie. But I don't. In the main office, the school secretary looks away from her computer screen and gives me a big smile. "Hi, Grace. What can I help you with?" In second grade and again in fourth, I got picked a lot whenever my teachers needed to send something to the office because I was such a good little girl back then. So I know Mrs. Sterling pretty well. "I have to talk with Mrs. Porter, please. She just got back from the assembly and there's a busy morning ahead. Can this wait until lunchtime? Say about 12:15? I really have to talk to her now. It's about the buttons on the field." Mrs. Sterling's eyebrows jump about halfway above her forehead. "Oh, I see. Just sit over there on the bench and I'll tell Mrs. Porter you're here." I've looked into the office and I've seen kids sitting on the bench before, and I always felt sorry for them. And now I'm feeling sorry for me. Mrs. Porter's door opens and she gives me a smile. "Good morning, Grace. Please come in and have a seat there at the table." It's a small round table, and to the left of her desk, and I take a chair facing the window that looks out to the bus turnaround. Mrs. Porter sits across from me. She's not a scary person. She reminds me of my mom's friend Carla. Warm, friendly, nice, smile. Mrs. Porter is wearing a gray wool skirt and jacket with a pale blue shirt. And right away I start counting the buttons. I can't help myself. "So, you wanted to see me, right?" And before I can answer, there's a knock on the door. Mrs. Sterling opens and sticks her head inside. "Sorry to interrupt." She walks over and bends down and whispers something into the principal's ear. And this time, it's Mrs. Porter's eyebrows that go shooting up. She looks at me and says, "It seems that we need more chairs at our table." I'm confused, and Mrs. Porter is on her feet, getting chairs. I look over at the doorway, and suddenly I'm really confused, because two kids walk into the office and sit down. Hank Powell on my right, and Ellie Emerson on my left.